Hello, Jeremy Parker here for the first in a two-part restoration video series. This one is a little different because it's about my favorite childhood computer, the Commodore Amiga 500. Unlike my rescues of instruments that came before my time, I remember my family setting up this very Amiga, brand new out of the box, so the nostalgia here is pretty off the charts. Aside from playing totally awesome games on it with its groundbreaking graphics and sound, this computer allowed me to put together my very first MIDI setup, which was extremely exciting at the time to my 12-year-old brain. So one of my goals with this restoration was to reassemble that same exact setup, which you see here, and maybe even revive some of the music I used to play, including my first ever musical composition. Since there are so many great videos out there on the history of Commodore and the Amiga, as well as what technically made the Amiga so ahead of its time, I won't go too much into these topics. Instead, I'll talk about how my father was an early adopter of computers and how that led to our family growing up around the latest and greatest in computer technology, including the Amiga. Sadly, our beloved Amiga 500 sat in storage since the early 90s, but when I finally decided to rescue it, I was pleased to discover such a thriving community around the Amiga, making available new hardware, software, and tools for enjoying these machines today and far into the future. So in this part one of the series, I'll take you along the journey to my first time powering up the machine in 30 years. Then in part two, I'll get into more restoration work, all the mods and upgrades, adventures in retrobrighting, and an old school 80s Amiga jam. As always, I've linked to all the great sources that helped make this project possible, as well as all the original music I've been writing for this and my other videos. But first, what the heck is this thing, and why was it so special? I was a typical nerdy child of the 80s and loved anything having to do with computers, music, electronics, or the like. Our very first computer was a kit computer built by my uncle and given to my dad at some point in the early 80s. My uncle had taken a home study computer course from the Capital Radio Engineering Institute, so he built an 8-bit computer from a kit that ran a Motorola 6802 processor. We hooked it up to our TV set and loaded basic programs from cassette. At the same time, my dad began using computers more in his job and developed an interest in programming business applications. One thing led to another, and we ended up getting an IBM PC Junior around 1984, then a leading-edge Model M, and even a fully loaded IBM PS2 Model 80. The reason we ended up with all the computers in the house was because my dad was starting his own company, MRP Computing Systems, in which he began developing various business applications using the Smartware suite of software. I actually learned the software and started doing all my homework on it, bringing dot matrix printouts into school. Oh yeah, I was that kid. My dad hired several employees as the business grew, ultimately moving into an office space and even getting a real commercial made that ran on local TV stations. He was recently able to track it down for the making of this video. Check this out.
If you are considering a computer system for your company, you can save yourself time, money, and effort by contacting MRP Computing Systems in Westfield. We are not retailers of computer equipment. Rather, we custom design menu-driven software to suit your specific needs, recommend hardware, and train your personnel so they get the information they need when they need it. Whether your business is large or small, let MRP Computing Systems help it be as competitive and profitable as it can be.
It was around this time that we heard of a new computer on the scene that wasn't a PC at all, called the Amiga, which promised some new unique features and capabilities that were truly impressive. Another family we were friends with purchased an Amiga 1000, and when I saw that computer with its advanced graphics and sound and basically arcade quality games, I was just blown away. It must have been the middle of 1988 that we bought the Amiga 500, and wow, it was just an incredible machine. We used it mostly for games, and my brother and sister and I spent hours playing on it. We had a mix of big box games and programs, and of course some copies of games we received from our friends with the Amiga 1000, just to test out. Enough said. The most epic game to me though was Sword of Sudan, which had these huge detailed sprites, gruesome fighting, and very cool atmospheric sound effects and music. Although the Amiga community doesn't give it great reviews today, I was heartbroken when the discs started failing back in the day. I never thought I'd ever get to play it again. But I'd have to say that the program I probably spent the most time with was Deluxe Music Instruction Set. It was an easy-to-use piece of music notation software with some cool built-in sounds and support for MIDI. Around Christmas of 1988, we traded in our Kawai electric organ towards the purchase of a Yamaha B200 synthesizer. I had been reading my Amiga magazines, trying to keep up with the news, fantasizing about all the cool upgrades that were possible, and really discovering that the Amiga was more than just a games machine. Although most serious hardware upgrades were out of my reach, I did see that a MIDI interface was pretty affordable, and so at some point I tore off a mail order form from a page in one of my magazines and ordered a MIDI master. Since the Amiga could only support 4-note polyphony with Deluxe Music, getting another 8 voices from the B200 was really exciting. Since I wasn't proficient at reading music, I spent hours entering sheet music into Deluxe Music just to hear what it sounded like. Or sometimes I knew what the piece was, but just wanted to recreate it coming out of the Amiga or B200. During the summer before 7th grade, my parents decided to send me to a private school, Williston, Northampton. They had a great curriculum, including a music class where we composed our own pieces of music. I don't remember too much about how we were supposed to complete the assignment or whether it involved any music software in the computer lab, but I was anxious to use my Amiga, so I think I got special permission. I decided to write a short fugue, since I thought that Bach fugues were pretty cool, and I remember being pleasantly surprised with what I came up with. I only went to Williston for 1 year, but the experience of composing music for the first time was very encouraging. Since the setup lacked any real drum sounds, by Christmas of 1989, we got an Alesis HR16 drum machine to round things out. Unfortunately, the savings and loan crisis and subsequent recession forced the family to pick up and move across the state in the summer of '92. I had the rough dimensions of my room in the new house and even made this sketch of how I'd arrange everything. But after the Amiga was packed up for the move, it wasn't set up there for some reason, and it seemed its glory days were over. Fast forward to a few years ago, when I pulled the Amiga and all its associated stuff out of storage, as a last-ditch effort to maybe resurrect my fabled past with the machine, or perhaps to hear my 7th grade masterpiece once again. I had heard about the dreaded leaky internal backup battery, which had been gnawing at my conscience, and probably also the Amiga circuitry. So I decided it was finally time to take action and save this classic piece of computing history. So first things first, I had to get in there and see what damage might have occurred due to the battery that was in the A501 512K trapdoor memory expansion. I removed the memory module, and from the outside, it didn't look terrible. But after removing the RF shield by desoldering the tabs, I found the dreaded Varta NiCad battery had indeed ruptured and started etching away the top layer of the PCB from beneath the solder mask layer. I removed the battery and then started peeling off the solder mask from the damaged areas so that I could treat the corroded areas with vinegar. I then scrubbed the whole PCB with IPA to get rid of any remaining residue. I figured I would also replace the electrolytic cap and then come up with an alternative backup power solution to the real-time clock circuit. I figured that a couple of lithium AAA batteries in series mounted externally would be more convenient and last much longer than the typical CR2032 battery due to their higher open circuit voltage and over 10x increase in capacity. I put in a Sallen-Key diode in place of R913 to block the charging current that would have otherwise flowed, but also to have as low a forward voltage drop as possible when the RTC was being powered by the battery. Then it was time to take apart the rest of the Amiga to make sure that the Varta battery hadn't caused any damage to the motherboard. Once removed, I could see that the motherboard was in good shape, looking practically brand new. I removed the internal floppy drive, which also looked to be in good condition. Since the motherboard looked safe to power up, I knew I'd at least need the floppy drive working if I wanted to try running any software initially, so I decided to service it. This included cleaning the heads, relubricating the worm shaft, guides, and motor, and just getting rid of as much loose dust and debris as possible. I also scraped off some minor patches of corrosion on the sheet metal and polished some of the pieces with MAS. Then I serviced the external floppy drive as well, knowing that I'd need to remove it from the plastic case for cleaning and possible retrobrighting. In the meantime, I had ordered some conformal coating to apply to the A501 PCB where I removed all the solder mask. It went on with a small brush and dried clear. I cleaned the original tank mouse and got ready to power up the Amiga for the first time. Alright, here we go. The moment of truth. It's been 30 plus years since this thing has been on, and I've got my power supply, I've got my little converter. I know it's going to be monochromatic, but I can't wait to see if this thing actually fires up. Okay, here we go. Oh yes! How about that? Workbench version 1.2. Oh wow. Amazing. I can hear the drive working. Or trying to look for a disc. I think it does that without a disc in periodically, if I remember right. So I'm gonna just throw a disc in and see what happens. This is Gianna Sisters, so let's give it a shot. Okay, drive is working. The drive is seeking. All right, I'm not hearing any sound. Wow, this is amazing though. Oh my god. Oh gosh. I probably need to plug in a joystick. I don't even know if these joysticks work. I wasn't prepared for this. All right, let me plug in a joystick. Okay, it's doing something. This is amazing. Recoverable alert. Guru meditation. Oh man. I mean, the disc might not be good. That's certainly a possibility. Okay. Well, I'm just thrilled this thing is working. This is awesome. Okay, so far we've been striking out. The discs seem to be corrupt, I think, at this point. They're so old. So at least I'm hoping that's what was wrong. So let's try this copy of Wayne Gretzky Hockey, which is totally legitimate. I also have the audio hooked up now properly, so we should be able to hear the music. Here we go, intro screen. I used to think these intros were the coolest when I was a kid. Like these sounds. Oh no, I think it's crashing. Ah. Yeah, it's stuck in a loop now. I don't think it's gonna load. Oh. Maybe it will this time. All right. This is more promising. Fingers crossed that it continues. What's funny is that I found a letter I had written to Bethesda Software when my original copy stopped working. And this is back in 1990. And I wrote them a letter asking if I could get another copy. And they obliged. They actually wrote back. It was really nice of them. And it's so funny that I found this because I completely forgot about this. So some good news. I was able to get Deluxe Music Construction Set working, and it seems to be running. I did have an issue with the internal sounds. It seems like there's a playback issue. I'm not really sure what's going on, but I was able to hook up my old MIDI interface, the MIDI master that hooks into the serial port, and connect it up to my Yamaha B200, which was the same synthesizer I would have used with this exact setup back in the day. And it is actually working. So here's Scott Joplin's Cleofa. Man, this brings back some memories. This is exactly what I would have played back as a kid, trying to learn how to play ragtime. This was the first song I learned how to play, going measure by measure, watching the sort of player piano function and the notes and figuring out one hand, then the other. Man. But wow, I'm so glad to see this working. Okay. So just for the heck of it, I took my data disk and blew it out with some compressed air, very carefully swabbed some of the surface of the disk with IPA and a cotton swab. And lo and behold, it's working. It actually loaded. So the piece of music I wrote in 7th grade, I actually found it. Parker's Fugue in C major. And I hooked it up to my Yamaha B200 once again through the MIDI master, and I had it all set up here, channels and the presets called up over MIDI and everything. So here it is, Parker's Fugue in C major. Okay, I think something got messed up there at the very end, but wow. I can't believe 7th grade. That's brings back some memories. Since I had proven that the machine was working, rescued my songs and Deluxe Music Construction Set, which was great news, it made sense to go ahead with some of the mods and improvements that I knew I wanted to make, and even some of the ones I didn't know I wanted to make. As I was about to learn, today's Amiga enthusiasts have done some pretty amazing things, and it's easy to fall down the rabbit hole. Finally, after a lot of thought, I made some decisions to address the cosmetics and somehow allow external access to my mods without ruining the look of the Amiga. But that's all going to have to wait until part 2 of the series, where I go deep into the modern world of retro computing and take this project across the finish line. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.